There you are. You can see you, Cheryl.
Yeah, cool.
Right, you want me to see yours now? Because that's what I wanted the other way for you to be able to see yours.
Oh,
so,
I see.
Yeah, that's why I wanted it the other way. Then I can show you the screen. But
Hey, Tony.
Pardon?
No, someone that's just logged on. I wonder if I can make this a bit higher.
Right. Okay, so I just have to speak to you and let you know where we're up to. Is that all right?
Hey guys, we're doing a Facebook Live to Manchester. If you're wondering what I'm doing, sitting here doing nothing. We're just waiting. They're doing a conference which is called the Great Family and Youth Day Anti-Knife Crime. Hey Michelle, conference. So we're just Facebook streaming. As you can see, we're just getting the technical side around it. So give us a couple of minutes. I don't know if you can see them, but they can see me. Hey. Just trying to make this a bit higher. Ooh, hello.
Okay, 1 minute.
I don't know. Can you guys hear what's going on the other side, or is it only me that you can hear? Type in so I can see. If I tell you, say I love you.
Okay, you, Cheryl?
Yeah.
Yeah, we all can hear and see you right now.
You say you can't hear me. It's good. Let me turn
No, we can hear and see you.
Oh, cool. Hey, Manchester. Michelle, it's your phone then, because Tony said he can hear me loud and clear. Hey, Maria. I thought you were partying somewhere. Okay, so there's a delay in the time, which is fine. So, thank you guys very much for inviting me to be part of this event. So that's good. I can't switch the camera around, guys, so they can see me, but I can't see them, and neither can you. But I'm sure they'll post again with regards to the full conference. So right now there's a conference going on in Manchester, Tanja, which is called the Great Family and Crime Conference. So I've been invited to speak, and thank you very much all who have invited me to speak. And as most of you know, my name is Cheryl Phoenix, and I am the founder of the Black Child Agenda, tackling the schools to prison pipeline. And what I basically do is challenge the unfair exclusions with regards to our young black boys and mixed race children in particular, when it comes to the education environment. Now, what that entails is a lot of the time is, it could be the fact that a child has natural hair, has an afro, a child has special educational needs, anything. And what I'm finding time after time is that even a child with SEN is being excluded unlawfully. Now, my rate of exclusions being squashed or a child getting back into school is like 99%. So either I'm that damn good at what I do, or there's an actual issue with the system. So for me, even when we talk about knife crime, we have to actually look at what is going on from going in education and ending up in the prison system. Now, I saw some stats on the government website the other day that said that 86% of young people in the prison system have, number one, a mental health condition that has been undiagnosed in school, or two, has come through being pushed out of school. Now, I'm finding time after time that children are being excluded for minor, and it's like a lot of it is low-level disruption. Bullying. A black child will be bullied, and when they respond, they're all of a sudden they're the aggressor. They're not allowed to defend themselves. Black boys, time after time after time, are being bullied. Black boys are being put in isolation. It's almost like they're preparing their minds for the prison system. Sometimes not given food, sometimes not even given work. Most of the children that you find in pupil referral units, who I might add, a lot of them are run by G4S Security. G4S Security, the same people who are abusing our children in the juvenile detention centres. If your child has lunch and they have to use their fingerprint to get their lunch, that information is automatically passed to a police database. So we have to look at the construct of blatant, what I would call racism and discrimination amongst our black children, and how they're ending up into the hands of grooming gangs, into the hands of carrying something for someone. And it can be parents, you have to understand, it can be as easy as your child is on their way home from work, you have to work. They're on their way home and someone says, oh, would you like me to get you some chicken and chips? Yeah, why not? It's not a big deal, like £2-3 meal. Then the next time, and this can happen daily, before you know it, it's like, oh, do me a favour, pass this over to such and such round there. This time your child doesn't know that they're taking drugs to somebody else. Then your child gets robbed or beaten up on the street. Those drugs are taken. Now your child's in debt. So what happens is, well, you need to get me back my money, first of all. And if you don't get me back my money, I'm coming for you and or your family. Now, your child could be as young as 12, 13 or 14 years of age. And before your very eyes, in the space of 24 hours, they're now involved in this grooming and what the government are now calling county lines. This has been going on for a long time. A lot of our young people that are dying are not involved in gangs because they like to keep talking about this gang thing, gang. They're not involved in gangs. Some of them are very innocent. My own son has been stabbed on his way home from a friend's house. He's not in a gang. I couldn't tolerate it. When we come back to the school system, which is where most of my work is, exclusions is a very, very, very high. A black child is 168 times more likely to be permanently excluded than any other race or nationality for low-level things. So that says that there's clearly discrimination going on. And whenever I go into schools and I speak to them about their policies, most of them have no idea what is even in their policies. Most schools and head teachers have no idea with regards to the guidelines that have been set out by government, the guidelines that they're supposed to follow with regards to the Human Rights Act, the guidelines that are supposed to be followed with regards to the Discrimination Disability Act. So all of these things play a huge part. As parents, I would say to you, before your child gets to that stage of being groomed, and you may not know, their behaviour may not change, they may come home with a new pair of trainers, they may come home with extra money and you don't know, please search their rooms, because if you're paying the bills for your house, then you need to know what's going on with your child. Please make sure you engage with the schools. Now, what I also find is that a lot of parents are like, well, it's the parents' fault. They're supposed to go down the school. Why don't they go to parents' evening? I've had cases where parents are working 3, 4, 5 jobs just to keep a roof over their head because they're not entitled to benefits. If you're living that kind of lifestyle and your child goes to breakfast club and your child's in school and you don't make it to every single meeting, there was a parent who was actually at she was actually a cleaner at the same school her child attended, but her child was getting into trouble, but whenever she needed to go to the school, she couldn't attend. This is where I'm very, very a firm believer in the village mentality. We keep talking about this damn village. We keep saying, yes, we need to build a village, but it's our responsibility. We're the adults in this game. So unless we start building our local village, our neighbours, our friends, the people that our children hang around with, then the village is not going to exist. We can't sit down and wait for somebody else, particularly the government, to come and create this village. I don't know what it takes, how many of our children have to be buried before we start taking this seriously. And for me, I'm not putting this on the government. I'm not putting this on the police force. I'm not putting it on anyone else but us as the families, as us, as the parents. If you know or see a parent who needs additional support and help, who is working all hours God sends, why don't you knock her door and say, do you know what, sis, I see that you're working, or whatever it may be, your son can come to my house after school. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we have to create that safe environment to avoid these boys and girls being on the road. Child sexual exploitation, we just seem to think it's a headline out there. It's really not. Even where I live locally, it's not, I don't live in the suburbs or anything, but I see young girls 9, 10, 11, 12 having to come home from school by themselves, being groomed into this child sexual exploitation. I have parents that I've seen who I've had to gun and cuss out because they know that their daughters at 12, 13 and 14 are sleeping with the butcher man to get chicken. Now, this is not on. This is simply not on. We, as the adults and the people in the community, need to take this shit seriously. Excuse my language. I hope there's no children in the audience. We need to take this seriously. We need to create, like with the Black Child Agenda, we're now looking to expand to Manchester, so you're going to see a bit more of us. I know we're coming up there in October. We need to start creating our own process. We need to start writing and putting our own policies in place that schools then have to follow. Remember, the schools are businesses. They're not governed by government, so to speak. They are all businesses. So right now their only agenda is to make money, and as long as they're failing our children, then that means that it's our business to make sure that this business is being taken care of. If we're insisting on sending our children to this hostile environment on a daily basis, where sometimes they're not even getting food, they're not even getting the right academic stimulation, then it's our responsibility to make sure that whilst they're in that hostile environment, all things that are supposed to be put in place is put in place, and that these schools are held to account. These teachers who are racially abusing your child because they have afro hair, these teachers that are racially abusing your son because he's black, these schools that are only teaching our children about the slave trade and nothing else, it is our collective responsibility to form different types of groups with ourselves. I don't care about having 20 groups doing the same thing. That's 20 groups speaking from the same hymn sheet, and that means that these 20 groups have to be heard at some point. So for me, I do believe there's a problem with the system. I know that there's structural and institutional racism. I do know that the government has an agenda with the schools to prison pipeline, because the prison system is a private system, which is the new age slave trade in 2019, 2020, and then thereafter, and it's being filled up with our children. So for us to stop that, then we have to look at ourselves and make sure that we are doing something different with regards to taking control back of our children and the streets. If we're taking control, like we all talk, the nostalgic talk about when we were younger, we had youth clubs. That's an excuse. I'm sorry. Because at the end of the day, where I live, again, it was a government-run building. I went there and I said to them, I need this building 3 hours a day, 1 day a week, to keep our children off the streets. And if you don't give it to me, I will name and shame you. They gave me that building, and I run a successful youth club once a week, because that was all I could manage. And do you know what my number one failure was, why I shut it down? Getting us, the adults, to actually do something different and come out and volunteer to make sure our children were safe. Crime in the area went down. We ended up with 186 children every single week. So it's not rocket science. We all know the solutions, but what are we actually doing to make sure we take responsibility for creating those solutions? When we talk about funding and government funding, that funding's there. If you pay taxes, our parents pay taxes, we built this damn country. But yet, we're scared to apply for funding. Apply for every damn penny where it is out there. And I'm serious. Apply for all of it, because it is ours. Why should our children not benefit from what's going on out there? People are saying, oh, it's the begging bowl. So, if the Somalian community, the Eastern European community, the white community, the Asian community, and everybody else are able to tap into this funding, if we are now not using political science and putting ourselves as people in the right places, from a political perspective, from an educational perspective, from a social services perspective, don't get me started on social services, in all these arenas, and making sure these people are held to account, then we are failing the generation that we claim to be supporting and claim to be talking about. That means that we as the adults are failing them, so we need to do something different. Schools to prison pipeline, one thing I'll say to parents is please get a copy of your child's school file so you know exactly what's going on, because it's not a matter of if your child ever gets in trouble or if your child gets excluded. A lot of the time it's probably when. You could have the quietest, most academically gifted child on this planet. Sometimes they just find a way of targeting your child. Get your child's school file. Sit down and go through your child's school file with your child, because a lot of what we see on our streets, as I keep saying, comes about once our child taps into or ends up being pushed into the pupil referral units, where if you're lucky, your child will leave with a few GCSEs, maybe in drama, maybe in art, but yet your child wanted to be, a scientist or an engineer. Get your child's school file. If there's something in there that don't make sense, then you need to challenge the school. If the school aren't listening, then you go to the governors, which again I know is a waste of time, but then you go to independent review. If your child's not in school and you particularly as a parent have to work, forget whether you're working or not. If your child's not in school, go to Fair Access Panel, FAP is cool, and get your child back into school. However, for me, I'm an advocate for home education, and I know I've spoken to a few people in Manchester where they say that there's not the same support systems with regards to home education up there for parents who need to work, etc. Listen, if they have learning centres, send your child to a learning centre during the daytime. If you need to work, you get a babysitter, you have a tutor that comes in. There's ways around everything. If you needed to go raving, you'd find a babysitter. So if you need to make sure your child's education, mental and emotional well-being is being taken care of, then you do what it takes. Because right now, mental health with regards to black children is on the rise. It is damaging. I've got young boys and even men who are autistic who are being groomed into gang activity, county lines, carrying weapons, and the police aren't looking at them and thinking, oh yeah, this guy's autistic. They don't give a damn. They're throwing your son or daughter on the floor and they're getting messed up. They're going to jail. And we all already, as I mentioned earlier, know the stats with regards to young people in the juvenile detention centres and also the prison system. So it's a huge area. It's a huge area. And I'm talking about before it even gets to, thank you, Angela, before it even gets to the point of them carrying knives. Carrying knives is kind of the end result when they've come through already being discriminated against by the teachers. Parents may not even be tapping into or listening to what's going on with their child because they're so busy, they're so tired, and it's just like, look, have you done your homework? Tidy up your room, get to bed. This is where that support of the village is needed. Children with mental health needs, if your child is autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, who's there to support? If it's not there, build it, create it. Like I said, it is our responsibility. I can't look to the government to come and raise my child because when I was making my children, they weren't there. So it's down to me to make sure. And trust me, my children did get a couple of licks and kicked down because I weren't having it. You're not standing on the street corners thinking that it's okay to do certain things, coming to bring shame to me and my family. We need to get back to the hard line of how our parents used to parent. And I'm not saying that you should just be brucking up your kids every day, but we need to get back to the hard line. And also be mindful that certain things you do or say to your children, particularly the younger ones, the schools are using social services as a weapon of family destruction. The amount of cases that I deal with now, I would say 7 out of 10 of my cases, which are involving exclusions or anything else, most of them social services, the school have called social services because you've gone in to challenge the school and then the school have turned round, they're annoyed, they're calling social services based around safeguarding. Safeguarding trumps anything else with regards to your child within the education system or anywhere else. So you need to be mindful. I have another lady who's on my team called Maria Rooney, who is an ex-social worker. Brilliant woman. She's a shutdown specialist, just like me, unapologetic. She also supports and advises. So I'm fitting a lot into a very short space of time. We will be up there in, I believe, at the end of September and also again in October, because challenging them before they get to the roads is my thing. I'm trying to deal with preventative measures before it gets to the roads, before it gets to them picking up a knife or feeling so scared or intimidated that they have to pick up a knife. Angela, tap me in on how long I've got again. I'm trying to deal with preventative. I want a case of where we have our own schools, whether it's here in the UK, Africa or the Caribbean. Forget this system. We need to open up our own schools, private schools, whatever they are. We need to get our children out of this system because the only thing I see is destruction. The only thing I see is that government's making money on the private prisons that are pushing your children in. The only thing I see is these people making money on mental health where they're pushing your children in and feeding them with tablets. But no one's actually taking responsibility. And that responsibility is down to me and it's down to you as the adults. Thank you. 3 minutes. And it's down to you as the adult. So I was just going to wind up there, but I see. So let me quickly tap on how easy it is for your child to get into the schools to prison pipeline. Number one, they're in class every day, doing fine, academically gifted, fantastic, love school. You know, when our children academically, we do really, really well. Love school. Over time, they've been abused, and that's the only way to describe it, by teachers, even other children. They're constantly being abused, put on. All of a sudden, your child's whole demeanour and attitude changes. They're quite low in how they come home. How was school today? Yeah, it was fine. What did you do? Who did you play with? There's 5-year-olds in pupil referral units. Why? Because they've lashed out. Maybe an auntie passed away. Maybe dad's left home, whatever it may be. All of a sudden, they can't manage your child. Why? My child has an EHC plan. These are the guidelines you're supposed to follow in that EHC plan. That's not being followed. Type to your school, find out where that money's being spent. Mentors, culturally specific. Anything that they are putting in place need to be culturally specific, and you can actually demand that. Then your child starts getting internally excluded, isolation rooms, reflective rooms, all these flowery, foolish names that they use. It boils down to the same thing. It goes on your child's record. It goes on their file, which is why I say get a copy of their school file. Then they start being externally excluded. 5 days, 10 days, whatever it may be. Sometimes it could be that they've been naughty, sometimes it's not. make sure you get the copy of the school file so you know what you're challenging and how to challenge it. All of a sudden now, oh, we're going to send your son or daughter to a PRU for a week, for 6 weeks, for 5 weeks to correct their behaviour. These places are like prisons, and kids are running around doing what the hell they like. I'm yet to come to a PRU where I see it's structured, orderly, and your children are academically achieving what they're supposed to achieve. I have never seen it yet, and I've been up and down this country since 2011. It's now 2019. From the PRU, that's where a lot of the violence starts. That's where a lot of the grooming starts. That's where the don't really give a damn behaviour. If your child is at a PRU, you can go to a meeting with everybody who's working with your child and find out academically where they are, emotionally where they are, and you give them maximum 3 months, if that. If your child has not achieved anything within that time span, then you can forcefully have your child removed out of that system, because they should not be there in the first place. Remember, it's supposed to be a short-term measure until your child goes back into mainstream education. So if they're not meeting the short-term measures, then what, is your child going to stay there for the whole of their school life and probably not achieve anything, be easily groomed into this gang lifestyle or this road lifestyle, and then boom, you've lost a child. Boom, we see another news article headline talking about, oh, another young man's been stabbed. We've become so immune to it that we're not realising the wider impact on the family that is left behind, on the mum, the dad, the cousins, the brothers, or anybody else. A lot of these parents are left with nothing. So I go back again as I round up. We need to take the responsibility. It's down to us. We need to become more collective. And my mum's calling me again. We have to become more collective in our responsibility. We have to be more unapologetic, because I'm very unapologetic in what I say and how I do it. And we need to make sure we challenge this system. I will be coming up there, everybody, to do some training on exactly how to challenge this system, because forewarned is forearmed. But my main thing is we need to get our kids out of these schools and open up our own. Thank you, Angela. I'm there. Thank you very much for listening and having me. And to all of you who have logged on to my Facebook Live, this is for an event that's taking place in Manchester. I know you can't see them, but when these guys have edited the film, we'll be able to put it out there and share with you, so what I'm talking about actually makes sense. Have a good day. I'm going to chill out now, and I'll look forward to speaking to you guys soon. Bye, Manchester.